All right, everybody, welcome back to Garbage Time. I know I've been gone for a while. I had to recover after that Milwaukee Bucks loss against the Miami Heat. But today, as you can see from my shirt with the We the North shirt, we have a Raptors or former Raptors insider, Dan Gladman. How are you doing, man?
I'm doing great and definitely former. I'm not very up to date on my Raptors news, but I still follow the NBA and very happy to be talking to you today.
Right, so Dan Gladman, for starters, he is well known for the first and only Canadian to ever produce the NBA Finals back when the Raptors won in 2019, and now he is a current instructor slash professor slash teacher at my school, Toronto Metropolitan University. And do you want to tell a bit more about yourself?
Sure, I'd be happy to. I wear a lot of hats right now. My full-time job is at CTV under the umbrella of Bell Media. I produce a couple of shows for CP24. I produce a twice weekly show for BNN Bloomberg. I'm presently on contract to produce some Major League Soccer MLS season pass on Apple TV. And I'll be starting on CEBL Game of the Week on TSN, which starts on May 24th. In my spare time, like you said, I'm a teacher, instructor. I taught this winter semester, I taught sport media programming in the radio, television, arts, sport media program at Toronto Metropolitan University. And I've been teaching a course in live event coverage at the College of Sports Media for the last 3 years. So um, the hustle is real and the grind never stops. You just keep going as your life keeps continuing.
Exactly, especially within the sport industry, right? And I want to hear more about your journey. You were a Raptors producer, and now you move on to CEBL, which is a more of like a expected transition. But with the MLS, how has that been like?
Well, yeah, I mean, I was with I graduated from what was then called Ryerson University, the journalism program, in 1999. I worked a couple years at what was then CTV Sportsnet, and then I got an opportunity at what was called at the time Raptors NBA TV, and I worked with the Raptors for 18 years. That came to an end at the end of 2019. Christmas Day was the last game I produced. And then, we went into this coronavirus pandemic, and the industry, the market, the world really kind of shriveled, and there weren't a lot of opportunities. Um, I considered going to the United States. That wasn't my first choice. I would have done it, but it wasn't my first choice. Um, and really, I actually worked on a science telethon to raise some money that was given to Doctors Without Borders (MSF) in the early days of the pandemic. One of the first opportunities that came to me was to produce the the Canadian Elite Basketball League, the CEBL, and they were in a bubble. It was July August 2021, or was it 20? No, it was 2020, and I had some connections there. I spoke to them, and I was given the opportunity. It was they only played ball for about 2 weeks in the bubble in St. Catharines, Ontario, but it gave me a chance to get back to doing what I love, which is producing live basketball games. And then I've done the CEBL the last couple of years, and I just really enjoy it. I love the action. It's still, it's not the NBA, but it's still high level basketball. These players are all professionals. They play overseas in Europe, and they come back to Canada in the summer, and they need to stay in shape. And so, what better way to stay in shape than to play professionally in a basketball league and the opportunity to play in front of their friends and family? That's really the key of the CEBL, is that it's Canadian players back in the country, um, being able to show what they can do to the people that they care about. So really, by being involved in the CEBL, more opportunities kind of came my way. I mean, the show was on CBC for not the first year, but the second, third, and fourth year, and that got me some opportunities with CBC, and then I got to work on some Olympics. And you just, as the world came back from COVID, I found that more and more opportunities, more doors started to open, and I'm now on a path that I never could have predicted. When I started in the industry, there was no CEBL. I didn't know what BNN Bloomberg was. I never thought of myself as a teacher. And now all three of those things are bright lights in my life, and I'm really mostly just grateful for those kinds of opportunities.
Right, and CBL starting off at on May 24th, if I'm not wrong. So catch the
Yep.
action if you guys could. And speaking of the CEBL, and you produced the Scarborough Shooting Stars games, if I'm correct.
That's correct. So, in addition to the national package, which was on CBC the last 3 years and has moved to TSN effective this year, the games that aren't nationally televised, there's a original webcast for every team, for every so if you're Scarborough Shooting Stars playing Montreal Alliance, it's Scarborough's responsibility to produce a live webcast, and anybody in Canada and the world, anyone who subscribes to CEBL Plus can watch that. So it's a scaled back production, but you still have, I think it was 4 or 5 cameras. You have a play-by-play, a color analyst, and a sideline reporter. For Scarborough Shooting Stars last year, we had Rod Black call the games. Warren Ward was the analyst, and Savannah Hamilton was the sideline reporter. And this is before she became the reporter for the Raptors on Sportsnet. So, you're working with talent is being developed as well. It's not just the players. So I will be back doing the Scarborough Shooting Stars games, just doing the webcast of their home games, and I can tell you that that's just a joy to work on. No one does it for the money. Everyone does it for the passion, for the love of the game, wanting to see the Scarborough team succeed. We all love Drake and OVO, and they're owners of the team, and it's just super fun to be involved. And I encourage everyone to go to a game. It's really competitive and fun basketball, but B, there's lots of opportunities. People want to work in basketball. They want to work for the Raptors. Well, you can't always do that, but there's other ways to get involved in the sport and build your resume and get towards the Raptors. And I think the Scarborough Shooting Stars are a shining example.
Yeah. And you mentioned Drake, another rapper who did cause some headlines for the Scarborough Shooting Stars was J. Cole, who played for the Scarborough Shooting Stars. How was that? Like, did that bring more crowd into it and gain more interest into CEBL?
100%. Linus, I live in the West Queen West area, and there was a venue. It's been torn down now, but there was a venue where there would be kind of secret shows. And I got home from work one day, and it was like 5, 6 p.m., and there were just thousands of people crowding outside. And I later found out that there was a last minute surprise J. Cole show. Um, I'm a rock and roller, so I follow bands. I don't follow rappers as much. But I learned that day who J. Cole was and his power to bring in a crowd of people. And people love J. Cole. When it was announced that he was going to play for the Scarborough Shooting Stars, in May 2022, it electrified the league, the audience, the city. I mean, it brought a lot of attention to a league that really hadn't had much before. So I think he ended up playing one road game and 2 home games, and there was a lot of hoopla about it. The 2 games in Scarborough when he played were sold out. You could not get a ticket, and he was a big part of our webcast. We showed him. We made it a story. It was a story. Here's J. Cole. he Drake did him a favor, brought him into the team. He played in the summer in Basketball Africa League. He's a really good athlete. He really enjoys this. And sure enough, in that second home game, he came in and he hit two threes.
Nice.
So we were all over it. I mean, I could not show enough replays of J. Cole hitting threes in a game. It was a rollout to break. We loved it. It just gave an extra storytelling, um, an extra little bit of storytelling and purpose to the webcast of that game.
It's incredible. And Scarborough Shooting Stars last season, they finished second. And one thing I found interesting when it came to the finals was the Elam ending rule. Do you really like it? Is that a good way to cause up the, or start up the interest of fans, or do you not, are you not a fan of it?
I'm a huge fan of the Elam ending. And maybe now some people call it the target score. Um, I think it's a new twist. Um, it ensures that every game ends with a winning shot. The people criticize basketball because it takes 30 minutes to play the last 10 seconds. This eliminates that because there is no clock. Players aren't fouling intentionally to stop the clock. In fact, they don't want to foul. They want to play defense. They want to stop the other team from scoring. And two teams are racing to get to this winning score. I think it adds a lot to the game. I think it's going to come to the NBA. I'm not sure in what form, but possibly you could see it in overtimes in the NBA in the near future, where if the game's tied, if the game's 100-100, you take a break and it's first team to score 112 wins. It particularly works for the CEBL. And I'll say that because the level of competition it's so close that no team is really that much better than the other team. And so you have a lot of close games, and it's a really exciting way to end it. And what will happen sometimes, a team that has a big lead starts to panic and they choke a little bit, and the other team can make this crazy comeback, but it's not based on the clock. It's based on stopping the other team. So it really comes down to basketball skill and ability and execution. And I think in a league like the CEBL, I think the Elam ending, the target score really makes it fun. It makes the games go by really quick. Almost a game never goes 2 hours. Every
Right.
game, I think the average is somewhere between an hour 47 and like an hour 55. And it's just the perfect amount of time for a game. It just adds a little excitement, and every game ends with a game-winning shot. And what more do you want in basketball?
Right. I mean, the future of Canadian basketball is looking really bright with the CEPL, and I love the Elam ending rule myself as well. We saw it in the 2020, or since the 2020 All-Star game in the NBA as well. I'm pretty sure that had a little impact as well. And let's go back a little bit of time and talk about your NBA experience with the Raptors. You were with the team from 2009 and now to the winning a championship. How was that journey like for you?
Yeah. Well, I started as an assistant producer in 2001. So I was there for 18 years. And I say that because it added to the sweetness of them winning the championship. Because there were just so many hard years. For people who might have started watching the Raptors in that area, 2009, that era, within 5 years they're in the playoffs. But if you go back to 2001, 2001 was the year they won a playoff round. They beat New York Knicks in a 5-game series, 3-2. And you had Vince Carter. They added Hakeem Olajuwon in the offseason, and all of a sudden there were huge expectations on the Raptors in that 2002-03 season. But things didn't work out, and Vince Carter asked for a trade. I think that happened in 2005, and the team really fell on hard times. There was a bit of a resurrection in 2009 with Chris Bosh, TJ Ford, Jorge Garbajosa, and the team wins the division. I think it was '08 or '09, one of those years. and they make the playoffs, but they lost in the first. They just weren't a team that had championship aspirations. Um, in 2009, I did become the producer, and so for the next 10 years, I'm with the team. We're embedded. We're traveling with them. We cover 82 games a year. And it took me a couple of years to really feel comfortable in a job like that. I consider it a really important job. It meant a lot to me. And as the producer of the Raptors show, you're balancing a lot of stakeholders who care about it. The Raptors themselves, obviously, TSN, Sportsnet. For a while there in those days, we had some games on CBC. We had some games on Global. So the networks really care. The team cares. The owners, Bell and Rogers, they care. Sponsors. There were a lot of stakeholders to juggle, and sometimes you can't please everybody. But the 10 years that I was in the producer's chair were just incredible. I wouldn't trade it for anything. And I felt like the Raptors as a team, their real coming of age came around the same time as I was really comfortable as the producer. And that's in 2014 when they trade Rudy Gay. We thought they were going into the tank to draft Andrew Wiggins. But the opposite happened. They got really good. As soon as Rudy Gay left the team, the Raptors became one of the most competitive teams in the league, and it would stay that way for 6 or 7 years. So 2014 was great. You saw the debut of We the North, like you're wearing the T-shirt today. That we launched that campaign. We ran the first 30-second spot in a game in I kind of get the details wrong, but I thought the game was in Oklahoma City, maybe in January or February 2014. Um, and then by April, you have that first round series against Brooklyn Nets, and now the Raptors are the talk of Canada, and everybody's watching, and everyone knows who DeMar DeRozan is, and they know who Kyle Lowry is, and Jonas Valanciunas, and you have a really competitive team. Unfortunately, they lose in seven to Brooklyn, and then the following year they they lose to Washington Wizards in the first round. I think they got swept in 2015, but the pieces were in place, and you knew they could break out. And 2016 is really the first real level of success and really good memories of producing the games, because that's the year the Raptors get to the Eastern Conference Finals. They finally win a round. They beat um, they beat Indiana Pacers in the first round. Then they beat Miami Heat with Dwayne Wade in the second round, and then they run into LeBron and Cleveland, who are the eventual champions. So in 2016, we're producing games in the Eastern Conference Finals, which was it just was an incredible feeling at that time, and they won games 3 and 4, and it was like, are the Raptors going to make the finals? So that really set the tone for what came in 2019, which is the pinnacle of everything in the Raptors universe, and really, I would argue in Canadian sports broadcasting in the last, I don't know, I don't want to say 20 years, like when the Vancouver Olympics were pretty big, you know, 2010. And in the gold medal game of the hockey final, Canada beat the US in overtime on a Sunday night. All of Canada was watching that. So, maybe that game sets the tone for the decade, and the Raptors winning the championship in 2019 is kind of the finale to it. But that really, I think the Raptors' golden era is 2014 to 2019, and it was incredible to play a part in it. Did
From
that answer your
those,
question? I don't remember what the question was, but
no, that was a good answer.
it was
What
fun.
would be
Okay,
what would
good.
be the most memorable moment from those era then, from 2014 to 2019? Do you have like a specific game or like a moment that you have in mind where that's still with you?
Yeah. I mean, I have to say it's hard not to say the Kawhi shot in Game 7 against Philadelphia, and being in a broadcast truck in the moment that that happened, and everybody went wild, and in a way, uh, you almost lost sight of yourself because it was such an exciting moment. But really, for me, it was Game 6 in the East Finals against Milwaukee. And it sounds like you're a Milwaukee Bucks fan.
Yes.
My condolences on the 2022-23 season, and now Coach Bud is gone. And by the way, I don't know when you're publishing this podcast, but I think the best new coach for the Milwaukee
Nick
Bucks would be
Nurse.
Nick Nurse. I
Yeah.
think he steps in there. He knows how to beat teams in the East. He kind of knows how to stop Giannis a little bit. But anyway, the I just remember Game 6. Um, I remember planning for it. In my mind, I'm like, okay, the Raptors are on the verge of getting to the NBA Finals. Well, in my childhood, when I was a teenager, there was a song by the Tragically Hip called "On the Verge." Um, and it's just a song that I've just loved my entire life. And I went to the executive producer of the show, Aaron LaFontaine, and I said, "What do you think it would take for us to get the rights to use this song in the opening tease?" And he made a couple calls, and next thing we had the rights to use it. So if you ever go back and watch the original production of that game, the opening has a Tragically Hip song called "On the Verge." So to me, that sets up the story for the day. The whole story is, are the Raptors going to qualify for the NBA Finals today? And sure enough, they did. And I remember the shot of Kyle Lowry at the end, and he was just hugging a basketball and just looking into the heaven. Like it's one thing to win the NBA Finals, okay, but getting there is kind of an underrated part. People don't talk about the just to get to the finals. And like for me, when the Raptors won that game, and realizing I'm going to the NBA Finals. We're producing the games. It transcended even who the team was. It was just such an incredible moment. And I'm going to take it back down to your question. When we put Devlin and Leo Routens back on camera to sum it up, um, I thought Leo was going to cry, because it was just such an emotional moment. And Leo has been through a ton in his basketball career. He was a college basketball star in the 80s. He was a professional player a little bit in the NBA and in Europe into the 90s, and then he became the television voice of the Raptors when they started in 1995. And here we are 24 years later. It took 24 years to get to the NBA Finals. And I thought Leo was blown away by the moment more than anyone. And I remember seeing him on TV, and I'm like, keep the camera on him. This guy is emotional, and his reaction to this is what every Canadian is feeling right now.
And it's what sports is all about, right? Getting emotional because of these moments is what we all live for, right? And even with the Bucks, and I like the point that you made about the road to the finals rather than the final itself, because what I remember from the Bucks championship season is rather the Brooklyn series more than the Sun series itself, right? It was more about how hard the series was. And the Raptors really came through adversity against the Milwaukee Bucks too. They were down 0-2 and they came back winning four straight, but against the Warriors they were up 3-1 and injuries played a part. So I believe that's a pretty good answer with that. I think the Milwaukee Bucks, I think that's more memorable for me as well. I don't remember a lot of finals moments, but that game 6 still stings me to this day.
It's interesting, right? Like, I don't want to say the finals are anticlimactic. They're not, obviously. They're the finals. They're the creme de la creme of the basketball calendar. But um the journey to get there, you look at the Bucks, they hadn't been to the finals in like 50 years, right?
Right.
So even to get there, I mean, they won, and that was fabulous. And you felt, Phoenix lost, too bad. But still, you had the final two teams standing, and just being a part of that history. But the NBA is dotted with examples along the way of series earlier in the playoff. Like I'm thinking about the Lakers. The Lakers with Kobe and Shaq won 3 championships. But the moment that's the most remembered is the series against Sacramento, when the Lakers were about to lose game 6 at home, and there was a rebound, and it went to Vlade Divac, and he just swiped the ball, and it went right into the hands of Robert Horry, and he hits a game-winning
Game winner.
three-pointer as the clock expires, and that sets up a game 7. Of all 3 Lakers championships, that's the moment that I remember the most.
Right, right. And you mentioned that you were traveling with the team here and there. Were there any cool like player interactions that you had? I mean, you were there when Valanciunas got drafted, Pirtle, OG, Wiggins, Cat, even Bosch, right? Any cool interactions?
I mean, yeah, you have, yeah, there's little things that just come to mind. I remember we had a night off once in Miami, and all the crew was like, let's go to South Beach. And we didn't really know what to do there. And we were just walking up and down Collins Avenue, and we like ran into Vaughn Leonard. And you don't really talk to them that much, but that acknowledgement is always fun. Um, there was one year, I think it was 2003, 2004, and Mike James was like the really good player on the Raptors that year. And I was just doing some research, and I found this really cool statistic about I mean, I don't remember what it was, but it was something like if he scored 20 points, I don't know, in the first half, they were 10-0 or something like that. It was a really interesting statistic. And someone said, you should go show it to him. He's sitting right over there. And so I drew up the graphic as we were going to prepare it on television. And I went to him on the plane. We were in the air, and I said, Mike, check out the stat. Like, look what it says. And he was really, Mike James is really cool. And he looked at it and he's like, yeah, man, that's great. Thanks for pointing it out. But there's just all kinds of things like that. You run into Jose Calderon at Starbucks, or look, I ran into Kyle Lowry at Yorkdale once in his first season, and the team was struggling, and nobody knew who he was, and um he was coming off the bench, but he was at Yorkdale with his family, like shopping like we all do. And he came up to me because he recognized me from the plane, and that was the start of a very friendly working relationship for years to come. So when you're around a team, when you're working with them like that, there's a level of respect that they have for you, and obviously you respect them greatly. They're NBA players. They're our heroes,
Right.
and those kinds of moments, when you're covering a basketball team, that they happen, and you have to make sure to separate the professional from the personal. If I see Kyle Lowry on the plane or in the airport or at the arena, that's very professional, and I respect that. But if he comes up to have a chat with me at a shopping mall, I'm like, okay, this is great. This is an opportunity to talk with off the record and get to talk to someone who I respect greatly.
The last thing I want to cover is another Raptors insider that I believe that you're pretty close with is the man who shouts your name out. Rack it up, Danny G. Jack Armstrong. How was your relationship with Jack Armstrong?
Um, I mean, it's great. I would have met Jack for the first time in 1999, 2000. We worked together it was at CTV Sportsnet. We worked on the 2000 or the 2001, yeah, it was the 2001 NCAA tournament, March Madness. And Brad Fay and Jack were on the desk, and I was an assistant producer. And then I worked with Jack as the associate producer on the Raptors games. And then I was his producer for 10 years. And he won the Canadian Screen Award for Best Sports Analyst in Canada 3 years in a row. I think he won it I feel like 16, 17, and 18. And I love Jack. I know his family. I've been to his house. He has great parties in the summers. He has three grown sons who are amazing individuals of their own. And Jack's just great to work with because his passion for basketball is unmatched. He could sit there and watch a million basketball games one after the next, and he's happy, and he treats everyone with kindness. Very, everyone's special. And at the end of the game, he's the first guy who's like, "Hey, let's go get a beer." So, like everybody, I love Jack. The Rack It Up Danny G just became a really funny thing and a really funny part of the program, and nobody really knew what it meant. It was a very inside joke. But then the Raptors got Danny Green, and people are like, "Well, why is he saying Rack It Up Danny G when Lowry's hitting the three?" But it was just a really really fun part of the show, and I'm glad he did it, and I'm glad I worked with him, and I'm glad we're friends, and I hope to work with him again down the road.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. Thank you for your story time here today, Dan. I really enjoyed it, and obviously, I'll probably see you next year too, right? You did teach sports journalism, I believe, so hopefully, I'll get in your class and talk to you more about basketball here and there. And any
If
last words before we sign out?
Yeah, well, I mean, I hope to be your teacher someday. Even better, I hope to work with you. You're obviously a super passionate basketball fan, and you're taking the right steps by being enrolled in that program. A lot of students make the transition from TMU into the professional world, and it looks to me like you're well on your way. You know your basketball inside out, and I get what I would say to other students is, um, know your sport, but know all the other sports. You don't have to know everything that happened in every sport in the last 50 years. But what you do have to know are the stories today, and how to just have a little bit enough information to talk the talk. And in the uh, RTA class, RTA 235 sport media programming, um, one thing I talked about one day was what I called emerging sports. And by that, I mean sports and leagues that aren't necessarily the NBA. They're not Major League Baseball, but they're there. And there's opportunities for young people and students to get involved professionally. Things I'm working on a boxing event next week at the Owl's Nest. It's called Red Owl Boxing, and this is also owned by OVO. And it's being webcast around the world on DAZN. And it's not like boxing is new, but it is emerging because there's brand new opportunities for people to get involved. The Canadian Elite Basketball League. Um, we had a guest speaker in the class who was talking about beach soccer. Beach soccer is no one even knows it exists, but it's it's on international broadcasters. If people watch it on TV, there's opportunities to get involved in these sports that aren't NBA and NHL, and build a resume and build a career. So I guess that would be my final word. And for everybody out there, everybody watching, listening, there's lots of ways to get into sports. You just have to go in there and educate yourself about what companies exist, and what kind of opportunities can be available to you that you can use as stepping stones in building your resume and your career to get to the major league sports that you ultimately want to work in.
All right, thank you so much for the kind words, and I will see you guys with probably a Bucks review on the disappointing postseason and the off-season targets that we should get. So I'll see you guys later for that. But until then, peace out.